Monday, May 25th, 2015. Blind Vision United presents Motivate and Activate Empowerment with the CEO, Lorianne, as guest speaker.
Motivation, as they call it. We gather here Mondays to interview different people in the blind community, and to find out what they're doing with themselves and within the community. And today I am interviewing someone who usually is the interviewer. By the way, my name is Dennis, president of the Blind Vision United, and I'm interviewing Lorianne, who usually is in the interviewer's chair, but now we've played musical chairs so she can be interviewed. Hello, Lorianne.
Hello, Dennis. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well on this Memorial Day, so happy Memorial Day to you and everyone.
Oh, you too. Well, you're in the hot seat, so let's begin by talking about you. You are blind, I'm assuming.
I am visually impaired.
Visually impaired, okay. And tell us about that. When did you first become visually impaired?
July 12th of 2002 is the date that I officially went in the hospital and went into I had a gallbladder rupture on me, and then during that process, somewhere during all of that process, my I went into like a coma. My kidneys shut down, my pancreas, my lungs and everything shut down. And I went into like a coma for almost 40 days. And when I awoke on August the 12th of 2002, that's when we realized that my vision was impaired. So we don't know exactly what caused it. My optic nerves were damaged. So it was either from one of the medications that they gave me to clear out the stuff that ruptured out of the gallbladder, to clean all of that out of me. It did have a warning that it could cause blindness that my parents had to sign to agree to give it to me. Or either they think that possibly my blood pressure dropped too low during the surgery that could have caused some of the optic nerve damage, because they almost lost me on the table. So we're not aware of what really caused it, but as of that time, I've been visually impaired since then. And it hasn't changed since then, thank goodness for that. But I have no vision in the left eye. It's totally gone, but the right eye has about 2,400 in it, is what the last eye report said. So I see enough to get by, but not enough to drive or to read, normal paperwork without some type of accessibility devices or computers. Everything I see is kind of through a blur, like a cloud. But I thank goodness for the little bit of sight I do have.
All right, so you were in a coma for 40 days.
40 days.
40 days. So when you first came out of that and realized, what had happened, how did you feel about that? What was your thought process? What was your emotional process first coming out of that?
The first thing that hit me, because I have 3 children, and I was a single mother at the time. My 2 youngest children were at around 5 and 6 years old. They were close to 6 and 7. They were getting close to their birthdays. And I had a son that was around 12 at the time. My first thing that came to my mind was, I'm not going to see my kids grow up. And that scared me. Because, being a mother and being single, they rely on you. You're the only person they have to rely on. So that was my first thought. It wasn't about being blind. It was just, what am I going to do for these kids now, But I was scared, but I was trying to be hopeful that maybe this would change, because they wasn't sure what had happened, The doctors wasn't sure at the time. But after my first initial my appointment with the neurologist at the Eye Storm Clinic in Charleston, they said that there's a possibility that it could come back in 6 months, but the only thing they could suggest was to pray. And that was the only option to me. And after that, really, there was no other options. And after that, there was no surgeries to be done, nothing they could do to correct it. And they thought that it possibly could change maybe after time, but it didn't. And it stayed the same for all this time. So I've had the same amount of vision all this time.
All right. So when you got out of the hospital, you were finally back home. What was it like for you to be back home in this new situation having to, start your life as a visually impaired person? How did that process go? Did you?
Well, my life actually changed dramatically because I was living at the time in Charleston, South Carolina, and working and raising my kids by myself. So during those 40 days, my family had went into my place that I was living at in North Charleston and packed up my stuff because, they couldn't afford to keep paying my rent and, take care of my bills and stuff. So, and they wasn't sure what was going to happen to me, so they packed up all my stuff and moved it back here to my hometown, which is Sumter, South Carolina. And so when I came out of all of this, I had no home. I had to come back and live with my parents at the age of 32, and I had been out my house since I was 18. So that was a major change for me and very hurtful. That was the most hurtful thing, was to have to go back into my parents' home and to not be able to work and drive, and just the loss of not knowing how my future was going to turn out. What was I going to do for these kids? What was my, I was depressed. I went through that depression stage for probably about 2 years before I finally, actually it was a Mother's Day that I finally, I think, came out of it. My mom came up to me on Mother's Day because I was sitting on the front porch, and I was just crying. I was on her rocking chair on the front porch. I woke up early that morning, was going to get ready to go to church with the family for Mother's Day, but I didn't want to go. I was just crying. I mean, the whole day I just sat on the porch and cried. And my mom finally walked out there and pretty much got in my face and told me, get over it. There ain't nothing you can do about it, It's the way life is, fix, whatever you got to do, you do it, and you keep on moving on. And she kind of woke me up, kind of like a slap in the face in a sense. You're a mother, you got to take care of these kids regardless of whatever your situation is. So she woke me up, and from that point forward, I pretty much just accepted the way things were and figured I'm going to live it to the best of my ability and do what I can do, And that's what we did,
Yeah. What were your kids' reactions to all this?
Scared. At the time, my daughter especially was very rebellious. During the time that I was in that coma, I was told later on by family relatives that were helping watch her and stuff that she showed her butt the most. She was scared and didn't know what was happening, and she was being thrown into a situation, too, that she wasn't, sure about as well, because, she knew her grandparents and everything, but she'd never had to live with them, So that was something new for them, too. My oldest son, he took it pretty, he was at 12 at the time, so he was pretty calm about it. He accepted it. I was still his mother regardless. My youngest, he was 5, going on 6 at the time. I don't think he really knew what to think, and I don't think he really understood for a while what was happening. But my daughter, being the middle child, and she's always been the mothering type, I think it hit her the hardest. And she tried to be my mother. So when I came home and I had a big scar on my stomach from the gallbladder surgery, and I had a wound back on me, so I was on a hospital bed for several months after that, too, with that wound back on me all the time, and still had to be careful going to the, restrooms and things like that. So she was trying to be my nurse for a long time, and I didn't like that. I didn't like my daughter feeling like she had to be responsible for me at the age of, I think she was like 7, going on 7 at the time. She turned 7 during that time. And so that was rough on them. And even afterwards, when we did move out and get our own place and kind of get back on our own feet again, and I started proving to, my children that, regardless of the situation, I was still going to, be their mother. I was still in charge. I still could take care of them. I still could provide for them. Once we got to that situation, I still had some troubled times with her during those kind of like middle school and high school years. She just took on too much, and she felt like it was a burden to her that I was visually impaired. So we still have some issues with that, even now that she's grown. It's still a problem sometimes. But my sons nowadays, they're like, Mom, go for it, do what you can do. We're proud of you, Well, you've shown us that you can do anything you want to do, and they support me thoroughly. So I still get that from her a little bit, but sometimes she hesitates on, trusting me to be able to do anything I want to do.
Okay. So you're back at home. You have kids to take care of, trying to get back on your feet. So did you check into any kind of training or adaptive situations where you can learn how to do things anew?
Yeah, once we moved into a house that was kind of like behind my parents' house in a sense, around the corner from them, so I could walk to their house. And so I thought about, checking into what was available for me. And the only thing here in South Carolina was the Commission for the Blind out of Columbia, South Carolina. So I did contact them and put in an application and such, and they took me over there. And at the time, they were doing a training program with Avis to try to train me to be like a customer service rep for Avis Rent-A-Cars. And I had done customer service work majority of my life, so they thought that was going to be a good fit for me. But then when they came up and said I had to go live there for weeks at a time and only come home on weekends, that was impossible for me. I mean, I had 3 kids. I wasn't going to put my children on my parents, 5 days out of the week, and I only come home on the weekends. I didn't feel like that would be wise for the kids either, since they were already, still upset about the situation of me losing the sight. So I chose not to go at that time. And I basically, between the help of my 12-year-old son and friends, they helped me to learn how to get back on the computer. We started researching, software, because I was a big computer person before I lost the sight and was doing a lot of stuff on the Internet. And my son found some screensavers, screen talking software, and then we learned about jobs. But I didn't really learn jobs back then, so I found some other simple screen readers that helped me with the help of Windows XP. So for years, that's what I used until I was able to get back in with the commission, and they were able to help me get jobs and teach me how to use it. So I used it for years, just simple screen readers to help me through.
Okay. Well, what other skills did you had to adapt to in order to be able to live independently as a blind person, visually impaired?
Well, the cooking and cleaning and all that was pretty natural because I'd been doing that since I was a kid, as a sighted person. Cleaning, I just had to do it a different way. In fact, my mom used to joke with the kids that I vacuumed floors better than they did, and they could see. And but I just had to learn how to do it differently. I don't think I really had to adapt to that too much. The biggest thing for me still, even today, is the fact that I live in a state where transportation is limited. So the lack of mobility to me as far as being able to get in my car and drive was the hardest thing I had to adapt to. The fact that there was no buses for me to go get on, there's no really cabs to call here. You have to basically have someone drive you. So being independent of that and having my lack of freedom in that sense taken from me it's still probably the hardest thing I deal with every day, because that still bugs me that I can't just walk out my door and go get on a bus or a train or go to the store by myself. I got to call somebody to drive me, and it's aggravation.
So there's no cabs and there's no buses available pretty much where you are. So you had to...
No, I'd have to move either within the city limits. There is some little buses that run, but they're very infrequent. They don't take you very far. I mean, I could probably get back and forth to a few places if I lived within those areas that the bus ran. But I live about 6 miles outside of the city limits. I'm in the county. There is only one taxi company in this town, and if he doesn't come out here to the county usually, unless he's got to bring somebody out here from the city, very seldom will he come out. There is an RTA service here that from what I've understood from talking to them, they only pick up people when you have to go. You can get set up with them if you need to have somebody transport you to doctors and such, but give personal rides to the Walmart or the grocery store. I'm not sure if I've been told they don't do that. So, and I haven't found anything else around here that does.
All right. So after all this, eventually you started earning money again. So at what point did you start working and earning money again?
Well, it started basically after I learned how to get back on the computer. And my daughter and I together, I was an avid reader prior to losing my sight. So I had collections and collections of books. I used to buy books like crazy. And so what I did was we started doing eBay. That was my first thing we tried. We did some eBay selling and Amazon selling. So between the help of my daughter and my son, we started selling books. We'd sell all this, but I said, well, I looked at them, and the kids went through all the books. I said, pick out the ones that you think you want to read someday, and you can keep them, but everything else we're getting rid of because I got tired of looking at them sitting on my shelf collecting dust when I paid good money for all those hardback books that, I knew I could never pick up and read again. So that was the first thing we started doing. We started selling on eBay. I started learning again how to maneuver the computers again, so I got back into doing some web stuff, different little odds and ends things that I could find to do online. Whatever I came across that I felt I could do, any way I could make a little money, I'd try to make it. But there wasn't a big thing of making money until I got into the chat line systems here back in 12. We started doing the jungle phone chat. So when I learned about that, that's where things made a major change in my life.
All right. So the jungle was your big change as far as a job and making money. So tell us about the jungle. How did you come across the jungle? What is that? How did you, what is all that? Tell us about the jungle.
Okay, well, pretty much I had settled myself down to that I was going to be a parent. So even though I could have probably went back to work all those years that I was parenting my kids, but I chose to be a parent, and I was involved in all the stuff the kids did. So I kept saying to myself, well, when the kids graduate from high school, go to college, that's when I'll go back to school. That's when I'll go out and maybe find a job. That's when I'll do whatever I want to do. And I kept putting it off until then, and so I was at that point. It was like April of 2012, I started thinking about, well, my youngest son was getting ready to go to college. He was going to graduate from high school. He was going to college in August, and so he was graduating in June. So I went on to this date line because I was like, okay, I'm single. I need to find some new friends or whatever. So I got on one of these date lines, which was Live Links, and I happened to come across an ad that said something about the shout wall, which was like I call it a Facebook on the phone, basically. If you go on there and you leave a message and somebody can respond to your messages like they do on Facebook. So I found that and was interacting with folks on it for a little while. And I guess it was July, someone from the Facebook, the shout wall world decided to get a uncensored party line, chat line, which I'd never heard of those. And so he went out and got a chat line, and some of the people from the shout wall started, going over there and hanging out. And I would go over there once in a while because I was still a newbie to all of the folks that was on these systems, and they didn't really know me. So I would pop over every now and talk to them every once in a while and made some friends. And we all ended up kind of congregating on that one chat line, but that chat line turned out to be one that was not what we all wanted to be on. It was a lot of drama, a lot of fussing and fighting. And after one major event where there was too much fussing and fighting going on one night, several of the people on there were like, why don't you get your own chat line and we'll go work with you. And so I kind of got thrown into the situation, and we went through the process of earning our own chat line and got us our own uncensored party line, which is the jungle. And we started off with about 10 to 12 people came with me. We started the line together, and they've been with me ever since. And I didn't realize the potential that it could do for us out here until, I got involved with it more and more each and every day. So, and I wanted to use it as a catalyst, in a sense, to try to help empower the blind and visually impaired, because I started finding on these chat lines that there was tons of blind and visually impaired people out here. And actually, I started learning from everybody on the chat lines, because there was people out here that were totally blind, that were living with this longer than I had lived with it. And they had, gone through many obstacles in their lives or had done many jobs in their lives, and they were a motivation to me. They were an inspiration to me. So that's made me want to continue striving to do better with these chat systems out here. And that's what I've worked with since 2012, and I think we've done pretty good with it.
And previous to the shout wall in the jungle, you didn't know any other blind or visually impaired people. Is that correct?
Not really, no. I had contacted a local, we have the National Federation of the Blind chapter here. I had spoke to the president of that chapter briefly one time. And then in 2009, this was prior to, that was the first time I ever came in contact with JAWS. In 2009, I contacted a program here in town. There was another blind gentleman. He's a retired Air Force gentleman. He had a foundation called the Recovering Sight Foundation. His name was Mr. Towery, Neil Towery, and him and the president of our local chapter had started this foundation, and they were providing computers and JAWS training to blind and visually impaired people in our community. And so I had contacted them about it, and they sent me the application. I filled out the application and went through their training program. So it was right before Thanksgiving of 2009, and since I was very active on computers already, they did about a week's training with me is all they did, because they gave me the computer, they gave me the JAWS program, and sat down and walked me through the basics of it. And the guy was like, "Oh, you know what you're doing. Here, take the computer and go." So that was my real eye-opener into my true ability to use a computer fully with a program that was more accessible than what I was used to having. So that was my first contact really with any blind or visually impaired persons, was through them. And later on they invited me to come back at Christmas and speak to their banquet. And I was at that time I went into their banquet. There was over 300 or 400 people there at that banquet. And I spoke to them about the program and what having JAWS and what a computer could do for a person and how it could make a difference in their life to have that technology for a blind person. And that's when I started kind of networking with some of the NFB people. And that kind of opened my eyes up to my local blind and visually impaired persons out here.
Okay. All right. So good stuff. So you started the Jungle in 2012, and how did that go for you when you first got to the Jungle and you first took control of it? How was it in the beginning for you running a chat line yourself and so forth? How did that
It was quite a challenge, actually. Together with all the good support of the people I have over there, we worked together. We had made a commitment during the time that we had started, forming the ideals of what kind of chat line we wanted. We had started, making an ideal of what we wanted the chat line to be like, what kind of, place that we want to be, a place that was comfortable for everybody to come. And so through everybody working together and, the fact that my work ethics are about honesty, about being, honest, straightforward with people. If somebody works for what they work for, they deserve to make their money. And I think my morals and values was one thing that kind of lured some of the people to stay with me on the Jungle, because they wasn't seeing that from the other line owners on the different chat lines. But it became a learning process. I learned different things to do that would make the chat lines better. I learned from other line owners, from asking questions. I went out and talked to chat liners who'd been out here 15, 20 years on these things and asked them many, many questions, and they would teach me different things. And so I just, took it all in and tried to do what I could do with what I had, And I think we built something pretty good. We started trying to be more innovative and doing things that I didn't see other chat lines doing, like putting descriptive movies on the doors or building boards that had, information on them that people could actually use, and, making something different out of our chat line, just somebody sitting in the chat room.
All right, so as you were building this, and even to this day, what's the hardest part about running a chat line?
Dealing with some of the people. That's always managing people and dealing with people's sometimes pettiness or their drama. That can be the worst or most aggravating of it all, because everybody's different, But so far I think we've kept that down to a minimum as far as fussing, fighting, and drama on our chat line. I mean, we have it occasionally, but it hasn't been to the way that I've seen other chat lines turn out, where there's just lots of fussing, fighting going on. We keep ours more like a family, and we try to keep it that way. And, there's in families you're going to have squabbles, you're going to have disagreements, but still in the long run you hug and make up, and you're still a family,
All right, and what about the chat line has given you the most pleasure?
Meeting people, meeting the different folks out here, learning from them, them motivating me to want to do better for myself as well, and making myself look at, you have nothing to complain about. You need to be thankful each and every day for the sight I have, because there's folks out here that I talk to on a daily basis that have none. And they are my motivation, because I want to see The ones that I see not doing anything with their life, that's the ones I really work hard for because I want to see them change. I want to see them motivate themselves to do something else with their life. So they're my motivation. But the hardest struggles, I think, still, besides the people, dealing with all the money management, that can be, getting all that together each month, figuring out, who you owe this to and what, and keeping up with everybody's, what's got to be done for everybody. That can be a challenge. But luckily I have, good friends and family that help me as far as taking me to do stuff I need to do for that.
Okay, so we've talked about you starting this chat line with a few people that came over from another chat line. We talked about, you building this up and getting to know people, both the highs and the lows of getting to know people. And that's good. Have you ever met any one of these people that you've worked with over the past few years in person?
I've met you. I met you, Mr. Dennis, and I met Miss TJ, which is our secretary for Blind Vision United, last year at our convention in Orlando for the National Federation of Blind, because I joined the NSB a year ago, a little over a year ago now. And I decided, now that I'm getting involved with the blind community on the chat lines, I wanted to get involved with what was available in my community, which is the National Federation of the Blind. So I went to my first national convention in Orlando, which that was a challenge for me as well because that was the first ever trip I took as a blind or visually impaired person without my kids, without my dad. I did take a friend with me that was sighted, but actually she was just there for the fun of it. She wasn't there to be my guide or to hold my hand or whatever. She was there just for the fun of it and to make my family feel better about me going. But that was my first challenge that I took for myself that year, was to take a trip. And since then I've taken a couple more, so that was something that I was really, a new step for me, a new goal. So it was, and that's what challenged me after going to that convention to do what we're doing now with Blind Vision United here.
All right. So, well, first, I want to get to Blind Vision United in a second here, but I want to know, this is the first trip last year that you took by yourself as a visually impaired person. How did you feel? Was it scary for you? Was it exciting? Was it both? It
was both. I'll tell you, the thing that was the scariest for me was I don't walk with a cane, which I should sometimes, but I don't. I don't wear the sunglasses like the typical blind person. So when I'm walking around, most people don't realize I'm blind or visually impaired. So they look at me as if I'm sighted. And I walk, like a normal person, so I don't hesitate unless I'm coming up on a step or something like that I'm not familiar with. That's where the canes would come in handy. So I am bad about not using it. But it was scary when I went into this big hotel, and here's all these thousands of people walking around with canes and dogs, and this hotel is humongous. And then we went up to the floor to our room, and I'm sitting there thinking, okay, wait a minute, how am I going to figure out which one's my room, And then I noticed that as we got closer to the doors, that the numbers were kind of big. I said, okay, I can see that. And then I saw there was Braille on them too. I said, okay, well, if you're blind, you can feel the Braille. And so then I started doing things like, okay, what if I couldn't see? Then I need to count these doors, and figure things out like that. And I was just amazed all that whole week that I was there as I watched from little kids all the way up to grown people walking around with those canes and with those dogs, totally blind, no one assisting them, and they're going wherever they want to go. And I said, there's no reason that I should ever be worried or challenged by this. If they can do it with no sight, then I should never have to worry about doing it with the sight I've got. So that gave me the motivation to whatever, I can do it. It gave me even more motivation that whatever I want to do, I'm going to do it. So that kind of uplifted me that week because that motivated me. And after listening to all the folks there talk about the different things they were doing, the types of jobs they had, all the technology that was out there for the blind, how the NFB was fighting for the rights of the blind. That whole week was just, stimulating to me and a motivation to me. So it brought me back fired up, ready to do something that I could make a difference in somebody's life or try to make a difference and help out,
So like a very great and inspirational and life-changing experience there, okay?
It was. And it's still to this day I'm empowered, and I'm looking forward to going back this year And, I've taken other trips since then and met other people from the chat line since then. I went to a trip in March to Tampa and met some folks from another chat line, a Christian chat line, and that was fun. And then while we were down there, we decided to go on down to Miami, and I said, well, just like we had a gentleman on here weeks ago about he did a company where they took people on like their bucket list of where they want to see before they lose their sight. I kind of did that on my own. That was before I even knew about that organization. I went on to Miami. I said, I've never been to Miami. I want to go. I'm this close. I'm going. I may never go again in my life. I may never have the money to get this close to get down here. I may never have a chance to see it. I want to go see Miami. So we drove to Miami and spent a few days there, and we saw the Gulf Coast, too, as well, and I'd never seen the Gulf Coast. We kind of rode through it. I didn't get to stop and really spend time there, but that's my next trip. I want to go somewhere on the Gulf Coast and see the Gulf Coast in a close-up view. Right. New Orleans, I want to go there, too.
Cool. All right, so we're sitting here in the Blind Vision United interview room here, and some people may be wondering, well, what is Blind Vision United, and where did it come from? Where, did it fall out the sky? Tell us about Blind Vision United. How did you come up with Blind Vision United? What's the point of it, the purpose?
Okay, well, when we came back from that convention, I kept thinking about, well, what can I do to assist the blind and visually impaired community? Okay, we were already doing such things as, getting information and sharing it with others on these chat lines. We were already doing a Facebook, sharing information on Facebook. We were trying to, kind of combine the people on the phone lines with the people that were on the computer systems or the different places out here. But then I kept thinking, well, what can I do? These chat lines make money, so maybe I can give back to the NFB since they're a bigger organization that, does a lot of work for the blind and visually impaired. So I say, well, maybe I can make a chat line and dedicate it to just the blind and visually impaired community and to the NFB, since that was the organization I was involved in, which I know there's others out there, but that's the only one I was, familiar with at the time and at this time. So we decided to make this chat line here, Blind Vision United, and we set up the rooms for the National Federation of the Blind. Even though I haven't had the support I wanted from the National Federation of the Blind, I was hoping that I would get some backup, more support from other blind National Federation of Blind chapters or states to jump on board to kind of use and take advantage of this. And the reason why I came up with this idea is because majority of the NFBs who have what they call what's the word I'm looking for? They have these chapters that are like on the phone lines. So they go to the at-large, that's what I meant, the at-large chapters where they go onto these free chat lines, and they have their little monthly meetings since, they may not have a local chapter. So they go on these little monthly free chat lines and they do their meetings, but they're not making any money off of that. So I felt like, why couldn't I give them a room here on the chat line where they could make money off the minutes that they earned from their rooms. And so that's what started me on that. And plus I wanted to have a central place where anybody who was blind or visually impaired could come over here and try to, find information that may help them, like resources or technology or programs or anything that they needed to know to help them, get the access to what they needed to help them make their lives better or to motivate them to do better things.
And how long has Blind Vision United been operating?
Well, we kind of came up with the concept right after the convention, and we started working towards it, but we didn't officially open it till January of this year. It was around January of this year we officially kind of opened it up to the public, but it was here prior to that, but we were still kind of putting it together. So we kind of made our official around January of 2015.
All right. What do you see for the future of Blind Vision United? Are there any initiatives you're coming up with? Are there any other projects with or without Blind Vision United that you might want to start?
I personally would like to, I want to get it to a point where we are a nonprofit. So that's one of my goals. If I could ever take the time to sit down and do the research and get with the right people that can help me do what I need to do to make it official. I want it to be a nonprofit program where we can at some point start raising money and saving money and putting it away for possibly, scholarships or something for kids in the future, maybe to help other people and come up with some funds that maybe could help, fund some of the different devices that different blind people may need. Those are two of the things I would like to do in the future, to have money set aside to be able to help folks like that. And when it comes to the scholarships, my personal thing is I would want to be able to give scholarships to kids who are blind or visually impaired, but also to kids of sighted kids who have blind parents. Because I was a visually impaired person with sighted kids who went to college, and there was never ever a scholarship for any of them out there. Even if it was nothing more than $1,000 to help pay for some books, I would like to be able to offer that.
Okay.
At some point, but that's going to take time to build that up, and it's going to take a little work and some fundraising and some ideals to come up with ways to make that money too.
So we've talked about a lot of ventures, a lot of your goals, a lot of your wishes for the blind community, both here on Blind Vision United and the Jungle. So do you ever plan any in-person outings or events for either Blind Vision or the Jungle?
Well, we're kind of doing a combined thing in September. I want to motivate the ones here on the chat line that I work with to take a trip and do something. That traveling is something that we don't do a lot as a blind person. If you live in a big city like where you live, it's more ready to you to do that. But some of us who live in small communities like I do, or in these other Midwestern states where there might not be a lot of transportation, we don't really go anywhere. There's a lot of us that don't go anywhere. Some of them sit in their house day in, day out, never even go to the stores, never go anywhere except maybe the doctor's office or the grocery store with their family or something, but they never have any trips anywhere. So we have planned a first annual get-together for the Jungle, and I've included Blind Vision United in that, and that's going to be in September in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So I'm looking forward to actually meeting people that I have chatted with for going on 3 years now that are blind or visually impaired, and having them travel to Myrtle Beach, and we're going to try to do some things as a group, but it's more of a getaway right now. We haven't really planned any type of major events yet, or any kind of seminars or anything like that while we're there. This is supposed to be a fun get-together as a first annual meet and greet. And my goal would be to do this every year and take it to different locations so that we all have at least a once-a-year trip where we can get away and have fun and have a good time and spend time together as a group, as a family.
Okay, so the trip is already planned in September. How many people do you expect to attend this?
Right now, we've got it scheduled about 20 to 25, and the progress right now is scheduled to be there. And, it could grow. There's more than invited on Facebook and in the blind and visually impaired. We may have more show up that I'm not aware of, but for sure I know that about 20 to 25 people have committed to coming. And we've been doing things on the Jungle, to give away free night stays. We've been doing that once a month for several months now, and we're going to do it all the way up until August. I've been giving away a free night stay at that hotel that we're staying at to help some of the ones that are coming, out financially. We've, did little games and contests over there to help with financial means of earning money on the Jungle. So I've been trying to do things to help them get there, because I know that with all of us living on a limited income, we got to do what we can do to try to get back to each other, to help each other, to do the things we want to do.
Well, this is all pretty good, actually. So we've looked at these major projects. It sounds like you play games on the Jungle, and people do get paid because the rooms earn money, and you have these excursions to Myrtle Beach and all these things. So how do your callers and coworkers feel about this? Do you find that people take well to all of these activities?
So far I've had a really good group of people on the Jungle. The main line is the Jungle, because the Blind Vision United is basically being used for, we're hoping that they'll start using it over here for chapter meetings and seminars and stuff, but we're still kind of building that right now. But over on the Jungle, the room owners and the co-host and the callers seem to be very active as far as participation. We have a good, steady hand group of people that do the games and play the games and put up games for people to do. We have a daily participation. We have our little Jungle jackpot each month, which is usually a cash kind of lottery that we give away each month. But they're very active. I think they enjoy it. I try to change the descriptive movies out at least once a month, but I've been kind of slacking on that lately. But they enjoy listening to the movies and getting new movies put up for them to listen to. I've got a really good group of people that they take advantage and take pride of their line just as much as I do. And they put a lot of hard work into it and a lot of time.
Well, you certainly are a hard worker. The Jungle's been up for about 3 years, so that's...
August the 17th will be our 3-year anniversary.
That's definitely it. So if people wanted to, people who may be listening to us on YouTube or whoever, how would they call the Jungle?
Okay, the Jungle is 712-432-5154, 712-432-5154, and here is Blind Vision United is 712-432-4857. They can find us on Facebook, too. We're under the Jungle.phone chat is how they can look us up, and on Blind Vision United, it's Blind Vision United is how it's spelled out, too, it's with a space in between. So they can look us up on Facebook as well.
Okay. So are there any other things you'd like to tell us about your business? Because this is what this is your businesses, ventures, or yourself personally? Is there anything else you'd like to share?
I don't know. I'm open to questions. We can open up the room for people to ask us questions, I guess. Sorry, my phone is going off over here. Sorry, I got 2 iPhones over here that love to talk. Okay, well, I mean, I'm open to questions if anybody wants to ask. I'll unmute the room here. Hold on a second. And let people ask. We got a few callers in here. Let's see. Okay, that's one of them, I think, is unmuted. There you go. I think everybody's unmuted now except for our secretary. So do we have any questions for me? Hello, Propaganda, and I think Money Mike's in here.
Maybe going once, going twice. Oh.
Okay.
I guess no one does. Well, they put the phone down.
They may have put the phone down. Okay, well, we can conclude it then, I guess, if we don't have more questions.
All right. Well, this has definitely been a very interesting interview, and you certainly have come through a lot, and I applaud you for all of what you've done for people out here and for your strength and your motivation. So you would serve as a motivator for other people, because what I just heard here was a great motivational story here. So yes, as you get motivation from other people, they or others may be getting motivation from you and your story, and that's a beautiful thing.
Oh, I hope so. I hope that I'm able to motivate others and inspire others to empower themselves. That's the main goal out here. Is we want to empower the blind to do what they can do as much as they want to do. To have that attitude of there's nothing in this world I can't achieve, you know?
Okay. Well, good. This concludes our interview on Blind Vision United. Next time, Lorianne will be back in the seat that I'm in, interviewing a next lucky guest. And I thank everyone for joining us.
Well, thank you, Mr. Dennis, for interviewing me. I appreciate it. Y'all have a good evening.